Bulletproof Radio, a state of high performance.
My working hypothesis is that the people who don't acclimate to fasting are eating foods that cause cravings right before they start a fast. And when they tweak what they eat to avoid that, suddenly they can go through a fast. But if they eat the wrong stuff before the fast, they're just a train wreck. I know I'm like that. I did a 72-hour fast a couple of weeks ago just because it was kind of convenient. Like I've got it. I did 6 or 7 shows and I'm okay. But then, if I was to eat something that was wrong for me, like a big old kale salad or something, I'm going to be ravenous, and then it's going to be distracting. And then, I'm probably going to be less emotionally resilient than I normally would be.
Yeah. So, I haven't studied that, but I don't disagree with you there. I think that is potentially true. And yeah, it's I don't actually know what the right food is to do that either. So it would be interesting to learn that, to see if there is something to that.
I will send you Fast This Way if you'd like to. It is not an academic book, but it has a lot of references. I'd be happy to do that, just to give you some ideas to think about the direction of it. But I find there's 5 big categories of foods that are triggers for some people and not others. And this is from working with very large numbers of people over the last 10 years on the bulletproof diet side of things, which is like, what are the triggers? But lectins are a major trigger for some people, and different types of lectins for others. And they cause perturbations in ghrelin, insulin, and even like overall anxiety. So if you get inflammation from a nightshade vegetable because of your genetics, you're going to have a craving. But the next person doesn't have those genetics, eats them, and they're just fine. So it's really hard to tease out. You've got oxalic acid is another one that causes just environmental perturbations in people. This raw spinach and kale can be cravings. You've got phytates. And things like that that come in whole grains. For some people, a major issue. Other people, not that big of a deal. You give one person beans or whole grains and they're fine. The next person's like, I'm going to eat a horse. Right? And so you get into these buckets. Histamine will do it too. Fermented tofu full of histamine. People are histamine intolerant. Man, they're going to need a cookie. Right? And like they cannot fast without turning into a jerk. But then teasing those out. And the final one is if you're eating things like mycotoxins or high omega-6 oils. Both of those can cause cravings in people, as well as things they're allergic to. So for me, it's been like, how do I get 1 million people to figure out what's doing it for them so they can eat everything else? And that's been a challenge. But I do not publish studies the way you do, although a few people have worked on studies using the bulletproof guidelines. But I imagine if you clustered for those things, especially the first 3 or 4, you're probably like, that's funny. People eat pork, which is high in histamine, and those are the ones that have a hard time fasting. And the ones who aren't eating pork before their fast or processed lunch meats or whatever, they don't have a hard time. So I could predict those clusters and I'd bet on it, but I could totally be wrong too. I bet you'd find another cluster I never even thought about.
Yeah, well, I don't tend to look down at the micronutrient level to see what's going on there. So when we're starting some studies where we're looking at macronutrient timing. So trying to put carbohydrates in the morning when you are, I guess, most biologically ready to have carbohydrates. You have a big insulin secretion in the morning. You're most insulin sensitive in the morning, so carbohydrates are probably the time if you're going to have carbohydrates, you should probably have them in the morning. But we're studying that now, and also protein. So maybe there's some evidence of having it later in the day. It's not great evidence yet, but maybe that's the best time to have protein. So there's that kind of timing of macronutrients, and I think that's an emerging field right now, where timing of things, timing of medicines is really exciting field right now as well. So all of the medications that people take, is beginning to be an appreciation that maybe we're not looking at when they're taking the medications, and that could be we might not be getting the optimal best bang for buck, and the same thing with carbohydrates and protein. So I think that is interesting, but I don't look at the micronutrients. We just kind of focus on the whole level.
The whole level,
I guess.